workers' rights reform bill. And we find out today that if you choose to go down your pub, right, not that you can have a cigarette anymore because you're not allowed to, you're probably only allowed 1 pint because if you get drunk, that's probably against the rules. But now you're not going to be able to sit in a pub and have conversations, despite the fact we're a free speech society. You might not be, you might want to talk about the immigration situation. You might want to talk about transgender rights. If somebody in the pub that works there feels offended or anxious because of your comments, you could be elected. Elected. I can't believe I've said erected. They are now. Ryan has fallen on the floor. That is going to make the blooper tape. Mo Lovatt is the producer of Battles of Ideas Festival and writer. Mo, good out. I've just put my foot right in it, Mo. How are you?
It's all right. Sometimes the cover-up's worse than the crime, though, Jeremy.
Do you know, I could carry on about it. I'm glad you're not from Sex Matters. Anyway, there we go. Let's talk election, not erection. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. Can I just say to you, I mean, on a serious note, you can take a story like this and you could go, oh, my God, this is appalling. This is really quite frightening, isn't it?
It really is. I'm glad you've made it a serious point, because it's so easy when we hear of these things. Particularly, I was listening to you and Candice talking before this Labour government and how much they get wrong. It's very easy for us to think, oh, goodness, it's just political correctness gone mad and sort of brush it off again. But we are seriously in danger of eroding all of the democratic principles that once made this country great, and other countries around the world as well, of course. One of the things that you pointed out was that, you won't be able to talk about transgender athletes in women's sports or, grooming gangs or whatever. The point you made, perhaps inadvertently there, Jeremy, is we all know which side the sword's going to fall on. We all know, everyone, whether we're in favour of this bill or not, which are the proscribed views in our society.
Absolutely.
And they're about grooming gangs, they're about climate change, they're about the transgender issue. And so we know fine well that this is going to be part of a two-tier justice system. And the very fact that our speech itself is becoming accountable to the judicial process.
I mean, I find that I'm not... Look, I understand there are certain things. I love the fact this station is about free speech and common sense. There are obviously things that people can say and do say that are not meant to be anything other than hurtful. But I can also categorically say that if this country gets away from being able to allow people... In my world, right, Mo, you could spend 20 hours... in front of somebody whose very beliefs you would spend a lifetime disagreeing with, but that's a democracy. Let me read you a little bit more. So we've said that pubs can ban customers from speaking about contentious beliefs as religious views or transgender rights after fears of falling foul of that Labour workers' rights reform bill. The government has been warned by the equalities watchdog that rules could disproportionately curtail freedom of expression and be applied to overheard conversations. Ministers have proposed that employers must protect workers from being harassed at work by third parties, such as clients. If they fail to do so, they could be sued. However, the Equality and Human Rights Commission, the ECHR, not that I'm a fan of it, said that this was particularly challenging in cases involving a philosophical belief, such as people's views on religion or women's rights. Why am I not allowed to think what I think about religion or transgender athletes taking part in sport? Why am I not allowed to say that to my mate in the pub? Whether that offends Johnny behind the bar, some of what Johnny might do or think might offend me, but that's his right, isn't it?
Well, this is isn't ironic that this is about workers' rights, because this is not about somebody, a doctor, a patient being able to sue the NHS, a doctor being able to sue the NHS because his patient said something that offended him. This is about us lot, us great unwashed down the pub. This is about policing our speech. That's who it's aimed at. You can tell through the wording of the bill, they're talking about customer-facing positions and young people. I was a barmaid when I was young, and, you do have to put up with some horrible comments at times, sexist comments, but I wouldn't do it now. Do you know why? Because I've had years of practice of shutting these people down, and I've learned to stand up for myself. We could be faced with a future generation who can't stand up for themselves.
But I am so delighted to hear you say that, because when I say this to people, kids, whatever, are we not in danger of having a society that is so soft, Mo, so incapable of criticism? I mean, we were talking the other day about television, right? We're talking about Simon Cowell. He used to go on X Factor and he used to sing, right? And then he'd go, "You're not very good, I'm afraid." Oh my God, could you imagine the anxiety? I'm not having a go, but if you're going to do that and somebody, then you get to, if you tell them they're good, you're lying. I mean, we are getting to a point, and you said it, policing our speech. I think that's so dangerous. I think policing civilizations of public speech is the beginning of the end. And I look at this government, and I realise very strongly that even when we were talking in the election, you have to make sure that you're as balanced as you can. And I'd sort of been around in '79 and tried to make that point, because the Labour Party that I grew up, when I was being brought up, the Labour Party would either borrow money and inflation would be at 30%, or they'd frankly give everything away and we'd be skint. But this lot have ideology, it seems, over any substance that is utterly, utterly frightening.
I mean, I don't even class them as left-wing anymore. I mean, I know people on the right may disagree with that, but I just think they are this technocratic elite, this metropolitan liberal elite, and they've got their shibboleths that you cannot cross, and they're using all the power of the state to ensure that we fall into line with what we say. And of course, Jeremy, what we say also starts to impact how we think about things. You know, there's a lot of self-censorship from people already. But, you know, you gradually begin to think differently if you are forced, think about Stalinist Russia or whatever. If you are forced to say things you don't believe, that either makes you feel internally discomforted.
Said it earlier. It was about to say layman's terms and said layperson's terms. Not that I care. And this is not me being outrageous. If that's offensive, then just get rid of me. That's what such a joy, Mo, of being here, because to be able to say to people, you can talk about whatever, but this isn't out to offend. I think you should be able to hear all sides of any argument. But this ideology, again, just policing speech. You talk about a liberal elite, completely agree. I wonder, in your mind, if it will change. I don't know if it'll happen quickly, but I think there's going to be a massive kickback against this rubbish. I really do. I sense it. I feel it.
Yeah, I mean, there is. And I mean, I think there is hope on the horizon, by the way. I mean, as someone who comes from the left, I was absolutely delighted that Donald Trump won the US election. And you can already see, from Zuckerberg's comments about Facebook and Meta, that there is a sort of shift. I think he's
fallen into line quickly. It looks like Hamas and the Israelis have fallen into line quickly. And to see and hear the Democrats, that's fine, right? They don't agree with anything, and he's this and he's that. But there is something to be said for a person, man or woman, who says, and I think Thatcher, and people can have a go at me, she said, and I quote, right, "This is what I'm going to do. Come with me or get rid of me. And by the way, if you're in my party and you disagree with me, I'll sack you." In the end, after 10 years, she'd sacked everybody and they sacked her, but she had a plan. She had a plan. She wasn't scared. She had no desire to move away from that. I just don't see that anymore. I think you're right. Do you worry for our country?
Oh, definitely. And I think everybody does. And that might be one of those prescribed views that we can't say down the pub anymore. I think, people are genuinely concerned. I mean, what Candace said earlier as well was very pertinent. This is a Labour government who wouldn't reveal what they were going to do. The mainstream media didn't hold them to account. They didn't push them for their policies. They just assumed they would be in line.
That's how bad. That is why, in my mind, the Tory party will not be... this is really important, and Kemi Badenoch maybe gets this, maybe she doesn't. I think the biggest battle for the Tory party, as bad as it gets, week in, week out under this government, I think people are going, "You did such a bad job and lied to us and didn't do what you said, that we've got this shambles for 5 years. This is bad, but we will be holding you to account as well," which is why I think that news last night about reform is really seismic, because I think suddenly we've got a third political party in this country that's not just on a whim, but has a very great chance of holding the balance of power and having a real part to play in our future political government. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing you've got to say about the Conservatives, this woke ideology was coming down the pipeline. It was already halfway down the pipeline when they were in government, and they did nothing to stem the tide. They didn't put any measures in place at all, knowing probably full well that there would be a Labour government coming up. So, they're pretty remiss as well. And it is the likes of the Reform Party. I quite like the look of the SDP party as well. You probably had them on your show as well, who really understand that ordinary people, working people, to use the government's pathetic phrase, ordinary people do not like this stuff. We are genuinely a kind of liberal democratic nation at heart. And
I always use the example of the I call them jams, just about managing. I'm not bothered about their political persuasion. I'm talking about people who have 2 kids. He and she both work. Their kids are clean and fed. They've never broken the law. They've never had a handout from anybody. They must be looking at the telly or the radio and thinking, why the hell have I lived my life so goddamn correctly when actually at the end of the day, other people, illegal migrants, criminals, I don't know, the political, ideological elite are doing better than me. Maybe I shouldn't live my life correctly. That's what I think the government, in this case, do not understand. People are really, really frustrated, Mo, aren't they?
Yeah, and I mean, you can feel the resentment building up. I go to something called politics in pubs, where we're just about still allowed
politics
to
in pubs? You won't be allowed to do that, you old drunk. You can't be having a discussion in a pub, Mo. What are you talking about?
We talk about this stuff all the time. You can see the resentment building, and I think that's probably what happened in America. And I think that's why Reform are doing so well. Reform need to definitely get their act together in terms of the kind of structure and their democratic structure and all the rest of it, because I think a lot of people are relying on them to be the bulwark.
Couldn't agree more. Listen, Mo, it's so good to have you on. Mo Lovatt there, brilliant. I'll have her on whenever. The producer of Battle of Ideas Festival. She's a writer. She's very welcome on Talk Drive.